I want to bring in Nationals leader David Littleproud, who was just listening to a bit of that. This has been an ongoing dispute for days now, the concern that New Year's Eve could be derailed by the unions. Do you give points to the New South Wales Labor Premier? He's not on your side of politics, but he's stuck to his guns here and refused to cave to the big pay demand.
Well, he had to, because the federal Labor Party went over to be seen. And the reality is what's happened since the election of Anthony Albanese. The unions are running the show in this country. I tried to be constructive when I became the leader of the Nationals. I went to the Jobs and Skills Summit. But what was most galling there was the unions beating the table, reminding Anthony Albanese that they owe him, and then they're now going to run the show. And that's what's happened in this country. And the fact that a union would try and hold the country to ransom, and as Craig Laundy just said, one of the most iconic days in our national calendar for our nation to be on show, not just nationally but internationally, for the unions to try and hold that to ransom shows the moral contempt they have for this country. And just thinking about, if they're the workers' friends, what about all those workers that could have lost their jobs and lost those hours of work at the penalty rates they get because one union forgot about the rest of the workers that were going to be lost in all this? It's not about big business. It's about making sure our country runs properly. And the unions have got too much power under Anthony Albanese, and that's the consequence. So Chris Minns, good on him. He's the only one that's shown some courage in this. Anthony Albanese and Tony Burke are already tucking into their Christmas ham while New South Wales was falling apart.
I wanted to ask you about our top story, this concerning development that an Australian man seems to have been captured by Russia fighting in Ukraine. There's talk about, a potential of what's being framed as a prisoner swap, although I'd point out the man who wants to be swapped in the Russian consulate isn't actually technically a prisoner. But if that was to see the release of Oscar Jenkins, is that something you'd be comfortable seeing Australia do?
Yeah, and look, this is a difficult situation with the government that they've been put in. And this isn't something that Australians need to rush to think that it's a great adventure running to the Ukraine. That's a war zone, and bad things are going to happen. The Russians are not our friends, and they won't treat you as a friend, and the Australian government just can't waltz in and get you out. I've had first-hand experience of that. A couple of years ago, I lost one of my constituents, a young man who was over there as a medic, and he was killed. And I saw firsthand when I handed his ashes back to his mother on her front steps, the absolute hurt in her eyes of losing a son. And I just say to Australians, stay away from this place. This is a danger zone. Australians are helping, and we're helping in a way that is getting the Ukraine government the resources they need. But we need to understand there's not a lot to negotiate with. And this gentleman that's held up in the Russian embassy isn't a prisoner. He's there on his own volition because he's running away from charges from our law. Now, I think the government needs to be given the space to work through this and to work through this constructively. And if there are options available, then obviously with the appropriate briefings, I think the coalition stands ready to support them in whatever endeavours they can do. But just appreciate this is a difficult situation that the Australian government's been put in, and that Australians should understand there is no magic wands for any government to be able to negotiate with Russia, so stay away.
Yeah, very difficult diplomatic effort, and I think everyone would like to see a good outcome here for Oscar and his family. Yeah. Well, if we make the hard pivot now to Christmas, I know there's a lot of family disputes often going at this time of the year, but the Nats seemed to get in a bit early. Keith Pitt, when he announced he was quitting at the end of last week, he took a pretty big whack at you, I thought. He says, David, you've been too obedient to the demands of the Liberals. Have you been?
Well, I think that was more about journalistic licence than anything else. It's a same journalist that's been calling me weak from The Australian for a number of months now. He has a crack every 6 months. Keith Pitt didn't say that in his press conference when asked to repeat it. I think it was a bit of journalistic licence, but I stand by my record as leader of the Nationals. Despite this journalist thinking that I'm weak, I'm the one that led the nation in the no vote. When there was only 30% of Australians that supported the no, I led a party that came out before everybody else, 6 months before the Liberal Party. We helped the Liberal Party get to that position. On nuclear energy, the first thing that I did when I became leader was write to Anthony Albanese and say, let's have a national energy summit and put nuclear on the table. The Nationals have believed that for a long time, but I'm the first leader that's been able to get the coalition to sign up to it. And on divestiture, the one thing that everyone said the Liberals would never sign up to, Well, I'm the first leader after people have been here for 15, 20 years been talking about it. I've done it. So I'm very comfortable with the team that I've led. And while there'll be some that obviously are disappointed that they didn't get jobs, the reality is the Nationals have set the national agenda. And if
did you speak
want
to
to understand that,
after he resigned the other day, David? Did you speak to him, and was he aware that he wasn't going to be able to return into the shadow cabinet? Is that part of why he decided ultimately to go?
Well, obviously, when you look at the performance of the National Party that has set the national agenda for the last 2.5 years, that have had the courage of our conviction, the team and the front bench that I lead are ones that have been part of that along with our party room. It's not about any individual in our party. The primacy of our party.
Well, he wasn't going to be able to come
culture.
back. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, where's a space when you've got a party that's outperforming the other major political parties? Where's a space going to be created? There's nobody that has not done the heavy lifting on the front bench at an intellectual level, at the level of prosecuting those key policy issues that are important to the Nationals. We have set the national agenda. In fact, I think there's been many commentators, proper commentators, not gossip columnists, that have put out there, David Spears, that the Nationals have real clout and proved that over the last 2.5 years. He's written an article less than 6 months ago. Also from the Sun Herald, James Morrow put an article saying if you want to look at coalition policy, see what the National Party's policy is today. It'll be coalition policy in 18 months. So I put my record as leader, but it's not my record. It's our record as a National Party. It's not about an individual. My legacy will only be as good as the party that I'm leading now, but the one that I leave behind in living up to the values and principles. And we've set that agenda more than any other political party. And I'm proud to say that I can work with Peter Dutton, who's had the courage to take the Nationals' hand and lead with us, eventually on the Voice and on nuclear and on divestiture powers on supermarkets. That's the power of the National Party. And I think real political analysts and journalists would see that and see what we've achieved over the last 2.5 years.
Now, David Littleproud, thank you so much for coming on today. Merry Christmas. You're always very generous with your time here on Sky News. I appreciate it.
Thanks for that. Merry Christmas. Have a great one.